right, welcome everyone to our very first episode of Score.org, the 725 podcast. I'm Ken Camarillo, and I'm here with my co-host, Rosemary Dannon. She's also my fellow mentor at Score here. And Rosemary and I are co-chapter chairs of our chapter 725, hence the podcast's name. The podcast aims to explore insights from influential people in the community who inspire and shape our small business community around us. So welcome everyone to our very first episode, How to Start a Podcast. So if you're a small business owner, you're thinking about starting a podcast, you're curious about it, we have a great show for today. So Rosemary?
Hey, Ken, thanks. And hey, everyone, welcome to our first podcast. And what better way to start a podcast than to learn how to start a podcast? And we are very fortunate to have Cara J. Stevens on today. She's a multifaceted gem. She's an accomplished author, storyteller extraordinaire, and most wonderfully, she is a Score client who became a mentor, who's gone on to workshop presenter and other great things that she's accomplished. She has a very, very long history of book writing, coaching writing. She is a wordsmith, a insightful individual, and a master storyteller. So, hey, Cara.
Thank you guys so much for having me and for that very glowing and warm introduction. I am so happy to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of the first episode of the podcast.
Our launch. We wouldn't do it without you.
We are super excited you're here.
And
Yes.
we've had so many conversations about, branding and all the other things. And you have an amazing podcast. So what made you go from just book writing, book coaching to a digital platform like podcasting?
I've always shied away from the camera. I am a word person. I am an introvert. And I know you guys have known me for a while now, and you don't see me as an introvert. And that's because I have started to come out of my shell because of this experience. A couple of years ago, I pitched an idea to this company I was working for called Reedsy, and I said, hey, you have all of these webinars. I would love to do a webinar on how to write a picture book from start to finish, because I had been coaching people for years, and I had just learned so much from the people that I work with that I was like, okay, now that I've learned so much, I really have something to give back. And the webinar was humongous. It had like tens of thousands of live viewers from all over the world. It was crazy. So I said, okay, well, now I guess I could turn it into a book. And it gave me the confidence. And then once I wrote the book, Picture Perfect, which was based on the webinar, I then said, well, maybe I should start a podcast based on the book, based on the webinar. So it kind of organically happened, and it organically snowballed. And with that, I sort of started to come out of my shell, and I became much more confident around people. And so I stopped calling going out in public peopling.
I like that.
And I started actually going to mentorship events. I started networking, and I started going into sales and marketing, and it just opened up a whole world that I had never imagined. I'm blushing because I'm really excited.
Oh, wow.
About it.
So I want to follow up. I have a question then. So you, in your journey, went from a graphic novel to author to editor to book coach, mentor, and so on and so forth. And you coming out of your shell was a big part of your podcasting. So is there a type of personality? Is there some kind of qualification that you would say is required of a podcaster to start?
That's a great question. I really think that it takes a desire and a passion.
Okay.
And I think you have to be enough of a good listener in terms of knowing who your audience is. You don't have to just know what you have to say, but you also have to know who you're talking to and what they need. And I think that that's what makes a good podcaster, is being able to take what's in your head and translate it to an audience that's willing and interested to listen to what you have to say.
The first moment you decided to start a podcast, what did you do?
Researched.
Very important.
Very important.
Researched what?
I researched free ways to start a podcast, no cost ways to start a podcast, how to start a podcast for somebody who doesn't know anything about podcasting. And what I discovered is that many people start by, using their earbuds or their phone's microphone and just record in a closet in a quiet space. And when I didn't have a walk-in closet that was filled with pillows, I actually sat under my bed and did it because I knew that that was the only advice I had gotten was you just have to dampen the sound. And it just I used keywords, I researched how to reach the people that I wanted to reach, and I also listened to a lot of podcasts. I found my favorites. I took notes on what I was interested in, what I felt the failures of some podcasts were, and from there it just sort of grew organically again.
What
To
kind of an audience size would a new podcast expect?
most of the time when you start a podcast, you don't get any listeners, which is actually really really good because it gives you time to have trial and error.
Oh, I like that.
The first podcast I did, I thought, okay, this is low stakes. Nobody is listening. Nobody even knows I'm starting a podcast. And I put it out there, put a few keywords in there, and I was like, I'm going to fump for a little bit. It's probably not going to be great quality, and I can take it down. And I didn't. And it's gotten, lots and lots of listens because people are interested because I knew that people were already interested, and so people were waiting to hear it
And that was based on your research.
based on my research and based on, you know, knowing that I had a little bit of an audience. Like, I put it out on Instagram, I put it out on LinkedIn, I put it out just to the people I know. I'm not a big marketer. I don't want to, say, hey, look at me, I've got this podcast. It's really just like, hey, if you're listening and if you see what I have to say and you like it, you might want to hear my podcast.
I love it.
So, so just from creatively, right? What is your process, kind of to the ideation piece and where you go to, and if you could kind of walk us through the big chunks of your process for creating an episode.
It really starts with a notes app on my phone where I just keep a list of potential topics. I keep a list of frequently asked questions of all of my clients I work with. I still work with people, and I think that keeping a finger on the pulse of what questions people are asking is also really important.
Hmm.
So if there's a question that comes up a lot, or if I just have an idea, like sometimes you have those shower thoughts or like 2 a.m. thoughts that
Hmm.
keep you up. And if there's a question that I'm wondering and it's keeping me up at night, then it's probably a question other people have as well. So that's where the ideas come from. They're just, you know, it's a list of ideas and whatever sparks in my mind at the moment, whatever's in the zeitgeist or whatever questions people are asking, I try to answer it. And that may come from, finding the right person to interview because I don't have the answers. Or it might come from doing the research or just ruminating and riffing on the experiences I've had myself. I just sort of try to
So it's
change it
playing
up.
with ideas, kind of, being curious about that.
Being curious, I think that
Okay.
that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
I think staying curious and staying open to letting the ideas find you sometimes.
I love that. So, question for you: in your podcast, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But I just want to keep on this point about the structure of things. You talk about the craft of writing, and you talk about the hero's journey, structure, and good storytelling. So, for that new podcaster, what's a strategy that you would advise them to use to keep those listeners engaged in the episode?
That's a great question. I keep them short. All of my episodes are actually only about 10 to 12 minutes. And I don't make it any longer than it needs to be. If it's an interview, it's usually about a half an hour. But for the most part, I basically tell people what I'm going to tell them.
Yeah.
I also tell them in the beginning, hey, stay tuned toward the end because I'm either going to give you homework or I'm going to give you resources or I'm going to reveal a secret. And
Ah,
that
A little
definitely
bit
is
of
a
a
nice
hook, a
little
little
yeah.
hook.
tease.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Or, a link to a download that they won't get anywhere else. Giving that little dessert at the end, I think, is really helpful, especially for a new podcaster who hasn't gotten the audience yet, who really needs to get people listening to the end.
Got it. Okay.
In a small business world, and you are a small business as a writer, author, your business is of words. Um, One of the things I really want to connect with is small business people who are thinking to themselves right now, I have no clue about why I would start a podcast, but I want you to touch on the branding and the sort of the carte blanche that it can give you in moments where it's like a leave behind. Oh, I have a podcast, and the credibility. Maybe you could address that a little bit and the benefits it would have. I also like to use the term, the rock and roll term was Lou Reed, one of my favorites. And they said Lou Reed never sold more than a couple thousand albums, but everybody who bought a Lou Reed album went out and started a band.
Mm.
And that's sort of that, the influencer versus the wide audience. And I'm thinking small businesses are sort of like the Lou Reeds in a way. They have something unique to tell, and maybe you're not going to get 8,000, that 10,000, whatever, millions of viewers or listeners, but you have a marketplace, you have an expertise that will connect with the people you need to.
I love the way you put it, that you have a carte blanche to, it's your podcast, it's your voice. You get to decide what you say and what topics you cover, but you're also showing that you understand your consumer, your customer. As a small business owner, this is your opportunity to show them, to share your expertise, your authority, your trustworthiness, and the fact that you can listen and you understand what their pain points are. And in the span of your podcast, whether it's 10 minutes or a half an hour or an hour, you can identify that problem and solve it for them. And that makes you a person that they will trust and want to come back to as a business, and they will want to become your clients. I did one episode, really a deep dive on chiastic story structure, which is where your beginning and your end mirror each other. So in podcasting, your chiastic story structure is you begin with what the problem is and you end with providing the exact solution. And it's like parentheses for an episode, for a short story, for whatever it is that you're offering. But that one episode actually gained me 5 coaching clients, where I have actually worked with 5 different people just from that one episode to coach them through writing a book of their own. A novelist, a children's author, and 3 other people writing business books.
In your podcast setup, the key words that you use to describe, it's sort of an extraordinary process you just described. These 5 people found you. They found it exactly who they wanted to connect with. And if I were, stepping back and like, how did they find you? How does this miraculously happen? But it's all based on the algorithms and the keywords. And like you said, doing the research. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that, on how the keywords really bring the right people to your podcast.
Honestly, it feels like magic sometimes because it does.
Darn.
Well, because you do the legwork ahead of time and you do the research on the keywords and you see what keywords other people are using, but you also, you could have those top keywords like creativity or writing or small business. But then you dial down and you say the things that specifically, if you want to reach a small target audience, those are going to become your loyal customers. My podcast is not going to get 1 million listens or views. It's going to get, 100 people, 200 people per episode who really, really need to hear what I have to say. And so I know the questions I'm asking myself. I know the questions my clients are asking myself. You just have to know your stuff.
Right.
And you never know what the algorithms are going to choose because the algorithms change all the time. Google has an algorithm that they call EEAT, which is, I'm going to get this wrong, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
Oh, wow.
And so their algorithm for search is that they somehow, through the magic of AI and the internet and the people that they have working there, can crawl all content and evaluate it for those 4 EEAT, experience, I did it again, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And they will crawl for those things in content, and the things that come up that with a higher score will come up first in search. And it's the same thing with podcasts. Somehow the algorithm will find you if what you have to say is authentic and
Meets that
heartfelt
criteria.
and meets the criteria in a very in a very authentic, organic way.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. We're gonna have to put that in the show notes somewhere, um, because I already forgot it. So I do. So we talked about kind of the content, the ideation, kind of the idea, concepting, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a small business owner. I have this idea. Okay, I've done the research. I've done the keyword thing, but tell me a little bit about the equipment or the tech behind this. I mean, what? How do I start simply with the basics? What would that look like?
That's a great question. For me, people come to me all the time and they say, "What equipment do I need to buy?" And I say, if you're starting your first podcast, you don't know if it's going to work, you're unsure, you're uncertain, don't go out and buy $10,000 worth of equipment. Use your phone, use the equipment you have on hand. Go to Riverside or Spotify or any of the free podcasting platforms that will allow you to record and download royalty-free music and do your post-production and edit and try it out and see what happens. And you become an expert pretty quickly. I
Hmm.
think the first time you do something and then you can end up at a podcast place like this where you end up speaking in front of a camera and you have technicians and you have hosts and guests and eventually it will happen, but start small and start free and figure it out as you go because that's how you're going to gain the mastery of it.
Perfect.
At least that's my advice. Other
Yeah.
people may have different advice.
I think just understanding kind of what you're getting into, right, and getting your arms around it, and having a confidence to kind of believe in what the content is, and who your audience is, and all that stuff, right? So you don't need the the thousands of dollars worth of equipment and gear to get started.
Well, that's where I wanted to turn the tables on you, Ken, because I know that you you
Uh-oh.
also have experience doing small business corporate podcasting.
Yes,
So, do you have a similar experience to that?
I do. I do. So when I was in a previous life, corporate, we actually recorded in our merchandise closet, and we built with plywood some soundproofing walls that were on hinges. So we basically walked in. There was a highboy there. We had mics. We had a producer outside who worked for me at the time, and a red box for and then we hired a company out of Colorado to do our transcripts and blah 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 blah. But it was super super low tech, super easy. But again, what's most memorable is walking into this little closet and having people wrap this octagon shaped kind of thing around us to record. So yeah, it's you don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need a lot of stuff.
That's my favorite philosophy of running a small business. I always tell people do the least you can do to get the most out of it.
Right.
And
Right.
technology's, obviously a phenomena. Came back from the production background in television, and we used to have these huge edit bays, and
Mm.
then they get smaller. Then you had a Pro Tools little
Yep.
tower, and then the guy came in with his laptop. So,
And he did it all right
yeah,
there, right?
Yeah.
so I remember that well, and it still exists. And in a way, it's the most egalitarian thing there is. Anyone can not only access the tools they need for almost nothing, but you can reach the audience that you were meant to reach.
Absolutely. And then you can grow. And as you grow, you gain more expertise, more mastery. And that's when you can start researching the higher tech tools. But just start with nothing and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you need a sponsor to start a podcast?
I didn't have a sponsor for my first 10 episodes and did just fine, reached people organically.
Hmm.
I ended up getting a sponsor where we traded services for
The barter system.
partnership.
Very nice.
It did expand my reach exponentially.
Excellent.
Just having a sponsor, I clicked the button on when I uploaded the podcast to Spotify, and it
Mhm.
said, "Do you have a sponsor?" And I said, "Yes." And somehow, through the magic of the algorithm that I wish I understood, I like doubled, tripled my reach.
Wow.
And I don't know whether that was because I had a sponsor or because the world was listening. I'm not sure.
Mm.
I think there's an elevation of professionalism that the algorithm recognizes at some point. That's an interesting phenomena, we'll
think
call
so.
it.
Yes.
Without understanding it. Do you think if you were a small business person saying, "Okay, I'm here. I want to do this. This is interesting," how do they outline a structure and just the most basic way? Because they're going in with a head full of information, and it's almost, we were talking earlier. It's more difficult to minimize than it is to maximize, to cull and be disciplined. How would you approach as a first timer, as the average small business person would be thinking? How do I even start what I'm going to say?
It's a great question, and it's a very common question to ask because you're crossing the threshold from zero to all in. I always say collect your frequently asked questions and the most pressing questions of your clients and the people that you meet when you're talking about your business. Start there. Start by addressing the biggest pain points. And answering questions is the easiest thing you can do. Even if you just start your podcast by saying, hey guys, I get a lot of these questions, so I'm just going to start with a mailbag and I'm going to start with all of the questions that people come to me, and I'm going to try to answer them to the best of my ability. And it's actually great because the more people you meet after you have a podcast, people will ask you the same questions over and over again. You're like, listen to episode 14.
Love it.
End of conversation.
I love it.
I addressed that in episode 14 on the 7-minute mark.
There you go. Love it. On the mark, on the timer. I do. I'm want to ask you a question that I really was curious about. So as I was listening to your episodes, I noticed that you changed the artwork in each episode to. Can you again? We want to inform the listener about how to start a podcast, what's important, but I want to hear about your intentionality there. What was behind that?
In the beginning, I was changing the artwork with every episode to reflect what the episode was about. I felt like it was colorful, it was eye-catching. I tried to have a theme of colors. I tried to make it stand out because people have a choice of millions of things to listen to on any given drive or walk or workout or cleaning session. And I wanted it to pop. As I gained popularity, gathered more listeners, I found that I changed my mind, which I'm allowed to do because I am the chef, cook, and bottle washer of my own podcast. And so I actually created one piece of artwork that now it will stand out and people will be looking for my podcast and they'll see it and they'll be like, oh, that's your podcast. So it goes either way. And yes, it was definitely a choice. And it was also in the beginning, I was really focusing. My podcast is called Picture Perfect. And it started because the book was called Picture Perfect. And it was a guide to writing your first picture book. But as I became more involved in writing nonfiction, coaching people of all different genres, Picture Perfect became something different and it evolved, which is another great thing about hosting your own podcast is I allowed it to evolve. I talked about all kinds of story structure and all kinds of writing and all kinds of audiences.
Which led you to your new book.
It did.
Yes.
Well, I have to say what led me to my new book was you, Rosemary. Because Rosemary...
No, I'm just a midwife. I just showed up.
You are a co-parent in this journey.
I love it.
Well, that's the power of SCORE mentors.
It's amazing. I came to Rosemary after a failed franchise attempt and was like, I don't know what to do.
It was a magazine, you should mention.
It was a magazine.
I mean, it was very specific to your sweet spot. I mean, but it wasn't right.
It was sales, it was marketing, it was content, it was hyper local, and it just was not a good match. But we just started talking, and you said, you know what, you have a lot to say on this. Why don't you come do a workshop? And then you said, I had a thought in the middle of the night, which is always, nice
dangerous.
When you're, it's nice when your mentor is thinking about you at 2 a.m. and saying like, I have a solution. You said you should write a book about writing a book.
Okay. So
So I started out leading these workshops, and then Write, Teach, Spark sort of came out of that, and it became a whole other way to reach people. The process of writing this book was really exciting because I was able to take the feedback from the workshops that we were working on and the input from your mentorship And again, as like I came out of my shell even more, I started listening to people, and I started understanding that, when I wanted to start a magazine, I was telling people what they wanted to read about. And I was telling advertisers what they wanted to do and what they should do. And I wasn't listening well enough. And it was a learning experience in the end. And it led me to leading these workshops and becoming a whole different kind of a person who is able to talk about marketing your book and about speaking authentically about your business and about what you're passionate about your business and about what you know. One time we had a workshop in at the Torrance location at the Civic Center, and I went around the room and I asked all the attendees, so what do you do and what do you want to say about it? And this one gentleman said that he had a packaging business and he wasn't that excited about it. He really didn't have anything to say about it, and it was just a good business to have. He said, I don't really know what to say. And I said, well, you have to start by listening to what your customers' needs are and what your clients' needs are. And I think it makes you a better business person when you start thinking about how to talk about your business by listening to what people need. It helps you promote. It becomes a conversation. It becomes a relationship between you and your clients or customers. Even if you're a professional, like, if a dentist or a psychologist or a lawyer, or if you're a chef, you're running a business, it's all really the same thing as a small business owner. It's really a conversation that you have with the people who come to you to solve their problems.
I love that word. I was thinking that you're a problem solver
You're a problem
and
solver.
whatever level of expertise or area of expertise you have.
So I guess that's my number one piece of advice, sort of smack in the middle of our podcast, is be a problem solver and think about yourself as a problem solver when you start a podcast. Think about how you can help and how you could extend what you do and reach a wider audience. And that will expand your expertise, your experience level, your authoritativeness, and your trustworthiness.
We've planned workshops of, how to be a better communicator, those kind of like corporate topics. But it was your workshop and it came out of our conversations because you're so good at understanding business writing as a art form. And your workshop is one of the highest reviewed workshops we ever had. And I love it because, it was writing for business, I think what we entitled but the point being is, the corporate jargon, people I think are a little intimidated, but just the basics. No, your business can be more valuable if you can communicate that via your writing, whether it's blog or podcast. So, and I love that as a branding extension.
And you're doing a workshop tomorrow, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes,
you are.
yes.
So
in
yeah,
Long Beach.
for scoring. Very cool. Very cool. So we have a few minutes left. Thank you for being here. Number one. Number two is this is a test. So from a top line, what are your top three points of advice that you would offer a small business owner who is looking to start a podcast? Top three.
Top three is think about your clients first and what makes them come to you. Think about what makes you unique, what your unique value proposition is, and what you have to offer. And talk to a SCORE mentor who will not only
Love the plug.
point you in the right direction, but will also validate and be a really good gut check on your vision and your ideas. And it's an amazing experience. So I would definitely recommend that as my top three.
I love that. Thank you for that. So, really want to plug your new book. This is exciting because you sent me an email yesterday
I did.
saying that it was being published and it is available. Just can you talk a little bit about the new book? Because we're super excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called Write, Teach, Spark, and it's a step-by-step guide to writing a book that matters. And it is published by Gatekeeper Press, who sponsored the publication of my book and sponsors my podcast. And they have been incredibly supportive Um, and also, SCORE had a huge hand in that. I actually got to interview Bridget Weston, who is the CEO of SCORE, as well as many other people. It really opened a lot of doors for me, um, working with SCORE to put this book together, and Rosemary was a huge, huge help in that. The book is available at Barnes and Noble and Amazon right now, and soon it will be available at bookshop.org, which is the independent bookshop organization. And you can also go to writeteachspark.com and download a free sample. So
Excellent.
it's a third of the book, and you get it for free. So
Nice.
hopefully, if you like it,
Very nice.
it may really help with podcasting as well. It's all about figuring out what your unique value proposition is, what you have to offer, and how to speak about your business.
Very nice. Cara J. Stevens, thank you for being here. Is there anything else you want to plug before we leave?
No,
Yeah, I mean,
no.
you've
SCORE.
got. We're so excited to have you here. It's a pleasure. We've talked about this for a long time, and we finally made it happen.
We
So
did.
thank you.
So thank you for
Yes.
our first episode in the can. And
Exactly.
we couldn't be
It's a
happier.
long time in the making, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy and honored to be here. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So check out Cara's new book, Write, Teach, Spark. It's especially written for small business owners and professionals, and you can learn more about the book at writeteachspark.com. Her podcast, the Picture Perfect Podcast, is available on your favorite streaming service. Picture Perfect, an insider's guide to writing picture books, is available at Amazon. How much? And your column is available at medium.com. And if you want to benefit from SCORE mentors, certified mentors like Cara, go to our website, score.org Long Beach, and you can find mentors all around. So thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. At SCORE, our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. Our podcast aims to help small business owners and startups by sharing real-world experiences from entrepreneurs like yourselves, and we want to provide solutions to challenges you may face as a small business owner. Our next topic is Olympic Initiative. Get procurement ready. Thank you to our podcast producers, Isaac, Lolly, and Neil. A big shout out to Solomon and Podcast Place for production assistance. Thank you for listening to score.org, the 725 podcast. If you ever miss an episode, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And thank you,
Thank you, Ken.
Rosemary.
Thank you, Cara.
Thank you, Cara. And we are out. See you next time.